Welcome to the Constructed Awareness Podcast. In this episode, Jamie Morehart, Christina Kantzavelos, and Tyler Orr explore how mental sensation and external orientation shape lived experience. Welcome to another episode of the Constructed Awareness Podcast. I'm super excited. Today, we have Jamie Morehart and Christina Kantzavelos. Did I say that right?
Kantzavelos,
awesome.
yeah.
Kantzavelos, okay. Yeah, great. So this is something I've been excited to do. Before we get into it, would y'all like to introduce yourselves?
Sure, yeah. My name's Jamie Morehart, and I'm a practitioner and clinician out of Durham, North Carolina. I've been trained in constructed awareness now for, many years. And it doesn't just stay between me and the client. I mean, it's everywhere in my life. It touches everything.
Yeah,
so it's been a very integral part.
Yeah, you're one of the first CA people to be trained in CA. Yeah, you're certified.
Sure.
Been through a lot of training with me, so welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I love how she said touches everything. I'm like, that's the most sensations-oriented thing ever. Amazing. My name is Christina Kantzavelos, and I am a licensed psychotherapist based between California and Europe, essentially nomadic. And I specialize in chronic illness and complex diseases, and as well as complex trauma. And constructed awareness has been just one of the most amazing things for my practice, for my clients, for myself. And like Jamie, just to echo what Jamie said, I see it pretty much everywhere, which I just realized is very environmentally oriented.
You see it. You see it everywhere, yeah. That's great. Y'all set this up perfectly because our aim today, so I did a podcast previously with Christina, and as we were sort of setting up, we realized, we were talking that Christina is very much externally oriented, whereas I'm almost always mentally oriented. And we thought, wow, that'd be cool to have a podcast where we bring on someone who's really predominantly sensation oriented and just talk about what our experiences are of life, our lived experiences. So to set this up, if you don't know anything about CA, what we just said may make no sense at all. So I just wanted to start off with a little quick review of constructed awareness theory. So the first principle is if you bring awareness to something, it changes it. So as CA therapists, we don't put energy into trying to change the client's experience. We put our energy into helping the client deepen their awareness of their experience. And we trust that that awareness will bring about the change that the client's looking for, right? So what do we bring awareness to? The second principle is that everything you've ever experienced is only made of three things. We call them the three building blocks of reality. And the building blocks are your thoughts, sensations, and external senses. So basically, everyone has a mental building block, a sensation building block, and an external building block. And the third principle kind of takes that further. It kind of takes the first two principles and puts it into practice. So the idea is that the third principle is that clients tend to rely more on one building block in most situations than they do the other two. And so for the mental building block, we have a mental orientation. I'm mentally oriented most of the time. So that means I rely on my mind, right? I live in my head most of the time, and I regulate myself through thinking. I connect more intellectually. We'll talk more about that. That's the purpose of today. We also have the sensation building block, which has sensation orientation. Jamie's here because she's a wonderful example of someone who is predominantly sensation oriented. And so you rely on your body, right, your feelings to navigate life. Christina, yeah, you are externally oriented a lot of the time. That means you rely on your external environment to regulate yourself and to connect with people. Right? We're on the same page so far? Okay, good. So I do want to say, though, that no one is one orientation. all the time, right? Some people are more what we call fixed in their orientation. We three tend to be more fixed, meaning we tend to rely on one building block in almost all situations. Is that healthy? That's up to debate, and we're going to talk about that today. It's probably not. Ideally, you know, we would want to be more fluid in our orientation, where it's like our building blocks. A certain one will come to rise to the top to meet a situation in the most appropriate way. There are other individuals who, kind of on the other end of the spectrum, we call fluctuating. So they don't really have a fixed or like a home base sort of orientation. So their building blocks are kind of changing in unpredictable and unhelpful sort of ways. That's a different conversation. I just want to say that. Like, we're focused today more on sort of the fixed orientation, and we are three good examples of what that looks like. Okay? So,
Tyler, I have a question real quick.
yeah. Yeah.
What is, from what you've seen, what is the percentage of like fixed mentally oriented types versus the others?
I don't know. Jamie, you've been doing this a while too. I'd love to crunch the numbers on that. I would say for sure there are fewer sensation oriented people.
I would agree with that. From my population that I've done this with, it's like mostly mental, like from what I've seen.
Yeah,
Jamie?
and a lot of external. What do you see, Jamie?
Gosh, it feels like it depends, which is probably a really sensation-oriented person response. But like almost in seasons, and I won't just say seasons of the year, but like seasons with myself, I just notice people see, like my caseload seems more sensation-oriented. Or then it'll shift all of a sudden, and a lot of people are very mentally oriented. And I haven't quite like pinned down, is that what's happening in me or happening outside of me? I mean, my go-to is like something happening in me, but it could be a combination.
Yeah. I mean, my theory is that we're all born sensation oriented. You look kind of like developmental theory. It's like we don't have a prefrontal cortex when we're born, so we don't really have a mind when we're born. Our external senses are sort of distorted when we're born. Like there's a oneness experience. I kind of think that like when we're born, we're just all body, and we kind of react from that. But I hate to say it this way, but I almost feel like society kind of beats us down in certain ways, and like we have to. It's like it's celebrated in our, at least in the Western culture, to be more mentally or externally oriented than it is sensational. And maybe we can talk about why that is as we go along. But generally, it's celebrated to be logical, and it's celebrated to put the needs of others ahead of your own, right? And that's where the external orientation kicks in. So I don't know the percentage, but I'd say it's much lower sensation, or who knows? Maybe the research comes out. We'll see if that's not true. I don't know.
Well, I guess I'm biased, right? Because I specifically work with clients who have chronic illness. So most of them, I would say, are sensationally oriented because, right? And there tends to be like this, almost like I don't know, right? And I think there's like a susceptibility with pain and being like very much in your body, in your symptoms. So I'm a little bit biased in that way because of my population.
That's right. And I think it feels like the flow is moving towards sensation orientation. So
let's do it.
We're about to put the spotlight on you, Jamie. But to speak to that real quick, I think a lot of times folks who fall in the camp of a sensation orientation, they also fall in the camp of kind of like the highly sensitive person. Jamie's nodding. Is that true, Jamie?
Yeah, I would totally agree. And I even thinking about kind of what you said, Tyler, about what our society honors, maybe I'll say it that way, and what it highlights in people and what it doesn't. So coming into a world and not having words around it or understanding around being a sensationally oriented or very sensitive being and being very aware of that, you get taught to distrust it. So then you disconnect from the experience until you're flooded by the experience, and it's everywhere. And so a big part of how CA has impacted my life is, I think I said this a little bit a while ago, of like reconnecting me to my trust with myself. And now, because I can do that, I can discern sensations. I can understand my sensitivity as a gift. I can know when I'm having a sensation, and that's actually because somebody just walked in the room with a headache versus me, myself, being responsible for the headache. So,
Yeah. So do
yeah.
you think there's a lot of like empathic stuff that goes on
Yes.
with being sensation oriented?
Yes. Yeah. That's why I think it's just so loud. Like, if you think about sometimes maybe the sensation oriented client that you've had that just seems, usually people come to us because they're not doing that great, but they just seem so overwhelmed. And it's like, wow, if you're getting so much information through the filter of your body, but your body can't process it because it's not your body's to hold.
Mm.
And so it just, even talking about it, like I'm getting chills, and like, because it just feels really reassuring, and like, yep,
Yeah.
that's true. Yep,
Yeah, I think you're bringing
that's
up a
real.
good point. Like, what is different, I think, than for an externally oriented person? Because it sounds like what you're talking about is like external stuff, but an externally oriented person tends to be more like out in the environment, kind of reacting to it out here, but you're still like you're in your body reacting to the environment inside yourself. Does that make
Right.
sense? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And like, I think we see that too, of like, depending on the attachment pattern, right? So you might hear sensationally oriented people referencing to the outside because we were responsible for the environment. But the way we were responsible for the environment is through our own sensations. And so that back and forth between like, what's mine, what's theirs, what's mine, what's theirs, what's mine, what's theirs. Yeah.
Yeah. And that can show up like as extreme empathy,
Hmm.
right? Or almost,
Hmm.
yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Christina.
I was just going to ask, Jamie, since you've been doing constructed awareness for a while, have you noticed that you trust those feelings more than before since constructed awareness?
For sure. For sure.
Okay.
Trust it more. And it feels like the increased level of discernment. Like, my central nervous system isn't just coming at me. It's not just attacking me, right? Life is not just that. And that's what it felt like for so long, is that just I think it goes together when people are sensationally oriented and say they feel like they're too much, because everything feels like too much.
Totally.
And so that discernment has really increased trust.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting, because it's like, talking about some of these deep levels of empathy, sometimes you don't really have anybody to cross-reference it to, unless somebody happens to say the experience that they're having, right? Like, I get practice with that working with clients, because I can start to get a stomach ache, or yeah, I'll just use start to get a stomach ache, and then the client might say like, yeah, I was really nauseous, and then I can name it, right? Really quickly, I get to name it, and then let that energy go. Whereas that's a little bit different when you go out in public, right? Not everybody's like, hey, I got a headache today. Hey, I'm sad right now. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah.
That's great. It makes me think like maybe we talked about how the other two, or like mental and or an external, are more um, celebrated. It's almost I guess I'm wondering, is there like an expectation to kind of like mask and come across that way, or in extreme cases, does it ever feel like okay, your natural orientation is to regulate yourself through your feelings, but does it ever feel like you have to fake it almost, and try to regulate through your thoughts and through the environment because that's more acceptable?
For sure. And I think that was happening before I knew that's what was happening. Like, think that's probably what got me through, gave me the performative edge to get through sports. It helped me be really good at things. I was like first chair in clarinet. Like I put my mind to something and I'm gonna do it. Helped me get through grad school. Very much in my thoughts. So yeah, and now when I'm in situations, slowing down is very helpful because that will just come back up. Depend like the mask, depending on what the situation feels like it's asking of my central nervous
Mm.
system. And so I got to be really mindful and check in of like, where am I right now? Like, am I in my thoughts? Am I in my body? Am I? Yeah,
Yeah, that's the goal, right? That's the big part of CA. It's like kind of where are you in those building blocks, right? So
for
that's
sure.
great. A lot of sensation folks I've met, they seem to struggle a little more than, I mean, everybody, a lot of people struggle with this, but maybe a little more in a different way for sensation oriented people, as far as like really differentiating the different building blocks. A lot of times it does it has it in the past at least felt like just that they're all crammed together. You can't tell what's what. You kind of talked about that with like sensation and external. Is that true for thoughts too? It's just like a
Yeah,
kind of a tangled experience.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about times of like when I've struggled with like paucity of speech, of like just the words are not coming, and it's because my nervous system is so. This is how I interpret it now. My nervous system gets so far pulled into the sensations that it can't even remember what a thought is. Like
Mm.
it's like there's some abstraction that knows that that's an experience, but to get from like looking at the sensation to connecting it to like, oh, I'm a being with thoughts seems so far apart at some points. Yeah.
Wow. Does that still happen?
Hmm. For
Does.
sure. For sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. A lot less. But it also then gives me information of like where I need to tend to after the fact if I've noticed that happen. Like sometimes
Mm.
it happens and I can engage myself enough to pull out of that space. Sometimes it happens and I just go there and notice. I'm like, we'll just say shut down. And then after the fact, I'm like, oh, I need to do work around like opening back up my throat chakra, right? Like bringing myself back into here because I have
Mm.
just disconnected from that because it got too overwhelming.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Um, One thing we talked about before we started was CA. When we like orientation theory, it sort of says that the building blocks, the orientation determines how we regulate ourselves and how we connect with others. Those are two topics that we talk a lot about in regard to orientation in trainings. Does it feel okay just to stay with you a little longer,
Yeah,
Jamie, with
sure.
sensation? Okay.
Hmm.
Being primarily sensation oriented, like how does that impact how you regulate yourself?
Uh, well, um, allowing myself space to slow down, kind of like what I'm doing right now of like, what do I need um, to regulate myself? Because sometimes information is just so noisy that I have to discern of like, well, what do I want? What do I need before I can even start to regulate myself? What do I need in that instance, in that moment? Um, but like right now I have a heated blanket on my legs
Mhm.
and it's what 100 degrees outside where I am.
Right.
With the air conditioning on, with the fan running. Like all of those things are really intentional ways that I keep myself grounded and regulated. Ice water just feels very clearing, cleansing, grounding. Um, so it's stuff that's going to impact or shift information for what's happening right here, right below, right in my skin suit.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, my wife is very fixed sensation oriented too. And I see her just, it's like if I were just to watch her in the wild, it's like I would see, she spends a lot of time doing things to comfort her physical body, or doing things to try to prevent discomfort in her physical body. Does
Hmm.
that resonate with you too? That's kind of what you're saying,
For
I think.
sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Like I
Yeah.
don't care for my body in that way at all, right? But I'd say a
Mm.
significant portion of her day is spent. It's like she's regulating herself literally through her body.
Yeah.
What about movement, physical movement?
Um, so I'm thinking about it just as you said that in response to like if a trigger were to happen, like if I'm in a meeting or in a place where I feel powerless or I feel kind of caged and like I couldn't speak, it would be like I'll do like shaking, um, and that's just kind of to break up because like depending on where the energy's sitting, right? Or like sometimes sit here, and it's like do shaking to get that to break up. Um, this is similar to movement, but different of like just really opening up expression. So allowing vibration to happen into my teeth, into my throat, however that wants to be. That's why it's really helpful to be alone because then I don't have to negotiate between like the mask of that and just like the expression of like what feels good right now for my body just to do. And it can look
Mm,
like all different types of stuff.
I
Yeah.
love that, and that's so different from my experience. I don't know if that's different from yours, Christina, but yeah, a lot different than mine, which is great. And I assume that you are naturally much more in tune with just your emotional expressions than Christina or me, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Communication's also a neat thing. It's like if you're listening to this, like maybe just notice like how we speak, like how words come out. I think even that can tell a lot about how someone's oriented. Yeah, I know we've talked, Jamie. It was like sometimes words are just kind of harder for you, right?
Hmm. Yeah. There's, yeah, this like, and of course, when you bring awareness to that, it wants to show up and like, hey, yeah, thanks for noticing me. We're going to make the words really hard right now. Um,
When you bring awareness to
and
something, it changes. That's the first principle.
sometimes like, it's like, thanks for seeing me. Yeah. Uh, but yeah, and I've noticed the layers to that too. There's so much nuance and so many layers to which has been helpful through CA that I get to slow down and look at why it's hard to articulate, right? Like, oh, why it just feels really regulating to keep looking at the sensation that's happening, like keep staying with it, or why I'm so activated in the sensation in a way that like whatever the stimuli is happening right here, it's like pressing up against, and it's like up against the throat, up against the teeth. It just, so it's so interesting to like slow down and be able to notice that. And also, another part of what constructive awareness has offered me is like, it's okay. It's totally okay for society or energetically to feel like there's a need for somebody to ask something and you need to respond and be like, well, I'm just going to stay inside my experience until I find the words. Because like without that pause, without that space to do that, I would never get to explore it. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Great. Well, thank you. Christina, do you have any questions? I know I've asked several.
No, I just think it's so interesting, right? Because as she's explaining how she relates to it, it's like, wow, that's wildly different than how I relate to it. Like, I'm curious, Tyler, like how you relate to the same, like, and
To her experience.
like to that same thing, yeah, with like regulation and just processing in general.
Me as a mentally oriented
Yeah.
person. Yeah. Okay. Like totally different. It's neat because my wife, like I said, she's super sensation oriented, and looking back on, especially when we're stressed, like when we're arguing, it's like the opposite thing. It's the equal and opposite reaction. It's like her mind slows way down and her body gets real active. My mind gets really active and my body is like really like stoic. I don't have a body in that moment. I'm just all mind trying to like make sense of the problem, And I used to be like, "Wow, like let's just talk it out." And it's like she wouldn't have words for it, and it was super hard. But like we're literally living in different realities. But like when I need regulation, I go to like analyzing and planning. My wife has joked before that she's probably going to find me dead on the couch one day with my calculator app open on my phone because this is like, yeah, that's just how like I operate. And I know that it's kind of celebrated in our culture, but man, it's hard. And I've recently had, Jamie, some experiences through CA practice where I've moved into my physical somatic experience deeper than I ever have, to the point where I was like identified as sensation oriented in that moment, and it was amazing. It was like the best I'd ever felt. I told my wife, like, but do I have to go back to my mind? Like, do I have to go back up in there? It's terrible in there. I have since ventured back more into my mind, and it's rough. And we talked, as a side note, but in CA trainings we talk about like every orientation is either in tune or dissonant, right? And just because like mental might be more celebrated in our culture than sensation, trust me, I would much rather have an in tune sensation orientation than a dissonant mental orientation, right? So there's two sides to every coin, and that goes for each orientation as well. But yeah, for me, it's just like overthinking. That's how I try to regulate. I don't know if it's regulating most of the time, honestly, because it just leads to more thinking and more thinking. Yeah. What about you, Christina? How do you regulate as an externally oriented person?
Well, it was interesting. Like if someone asks me how I'm feeling, I usually either avoid the question or I have to pause for a while because I essentially have to look at myself objectively, like from the outside, to
From the
peek
outside.
in. Yeah, to peek in and go, I am feeling these things. Like I was feeling emotionally challenged today and I couldn't quite map it out. And I almost had to step outside of myself and look within and go, huh, it's because of these things. And this is why I'm feeling them. And yeah, so that's always interesting. And I think as far as regulation is concerned, it's all about regulating what's outside of myself, and hence my historical and healing, recovering, people-pleasing behavior of
Yeah.
which ultimately is just a way of regulation and preservation. It's like if your nervous systems are calm, mine is therefore going to be calm because it's going to mirror essentially what you guys are experiencing. And it's this like almost like false sense of control if I have things organized around the house, because that's how I also regulate is, if I'm procrastinating, I'm going to start organizing, I'm going to start cleaning, I'm going to do everything but the task, which also is because I'm neurospicy, ADHD, and slightly on the autism spectrum. So there's that piece to it as well, but it's regulating what's outside of me.
That's
and
right.
and then of course constructive awareness and more somatic sensation oriented practices to irrigate emotion from within with movement, tapping, whatever it takes.
Right. That's great. And so, like, sort of the way that I always summarize external orientation is like, if you're okay, I'm okay.
That's it.
Right. Yeah. My mom's very much that way. Always puts the needs of others first, and it's just like she's sort of the glue that holds everything together in the family. And then she used to do this thing a lot. She still does. Where she'll text me out of the blue and ask her. She'll just text, "Are you okay?" And I always wonder why is she doing that. But now I know it's like she doesn't feel okay, so she's like, "Well, if Tyler's okay, I'm okay." right? So now I'm just like, yeah, okay, because I know like that'll bring her comfort, But yeah, that's totally like if you were to summarize it, I think that's it, and you said it perfectly. I'm just one thing I see a lot with externally oriented, because if your antennas are pointed out your whole life, that's like just your orientation. You don't have much experience looking inward. Like, so what's your experience been like as far as like knowing yourself? And I imagine you've done a lot of work to figure that out by looking inward, because that's sort of the antidote, right? If you're looking outward all the time, well, you look inward, right? So, like historically, what's that been like, and like maybe how CA helped you to understand yourself better?
Yeah. And, I'm also healing from chronic illnesses, and being externally oriented didn't help in my situation in the sense that I was very much disembodied, right? I was outside of myself. So I wasn't with my experience. I wasn't with my internal emotions. I was with everyone else's. So, what constructed awareness has done for me is it has allowed me to tiptoe into my body, because that's how I define healing, is returning back to yourself. So just slowly but surely and safely coming back into my body and being with it, learning about it, without complete and utter fear, because it felt so scary for such a long time. And like I said, with that, doing more somatic and sensation based practices and activities like dancing, and tapping. And yeah, it's an ongoing process, of course, I think, for the rest of my life. But it has been so freeing to be in my body, like kind of like what you described earlier, like when you're able to get into your like sensations and just be with them. There's something really liberating about it, because you're in your full body.
That's right. What about thoughts? Was that difficult for you to connect with at first?
Oh yeah, big time. Like even now, I'm like trying to catch them. It feels like they're out, and I just have to like grab a hold of them.
Like
It's
they're
not.
out here?
Yeah, literally. Like I'm like that meme where it's just like one big equation above at all times. It's not linear. That's how I'm going to describe it. I also don't have the internal dialogue most people have. That doesn't exist for me. So I don't have the narrator going off. I don't have a voice narrating what's happening. So I really have to like pause and gather everything together and just be with my thoughts, my emotions, my feelings all at the same time.
Yeah. Jamie, you're nodding your head, so I just have to. Are you relating to that, or are you?
That's so interesting. That's so cool. I'm like, well, what do you? I'm not that one to like. Well, what do you do if nobody's in there narrating?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's bizarre to
Yeah.
me because it's just constant chatter in my head.
Yeah. No chatter. It's just like it's like image it. I don't know how to describe it. It's such a strange thing how I conceptualize thought, but it's just like it feels like downloads. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah. So you see
Yeah.
thoughts.
Sort. Yeah. I guess so. It's like its own
Yeah.
psychedelic experience every minute of the day.
Yeah, and that's like I think about orientation. It's like maybe the theory is we're all thinking, we're all feeling, we're all noticing things external, but our focus gets sort of narrowed in on like certain parts, and as a result, like we're kind of cut off. So maybe it's like you're imagine the externals down here, and you're if those watching, right? So your flashlight or whatever goes down more external, and it's not hitting the mental very much, right? And so it's like the thinking's happening, but maybe like your awareness isn't fully developed to notice what those thoughts are, and those thoughts are. But for me, it's the opposite, right? I'm like the flashlight's just like almost all in thoughts, and like I'm not really noticing what's happening around me at all. This will sound like super weird to you, Christine, I'm sure, but like when I first was, was playing with these ideas about the building blocks and realizing like, wow, I'm in my head like all the time, disconnected from my body and in my external environment. I started to practice like literally trying to connect with. That's where CA came from. It's like I want to learn to see and learn to hear externally. I want to learn to feel. And so I just started doing whatever I could to figure out how to do that. But I remember I walked out of my bathroom one time in the house we used to live in into my living room, and I was like in the room, and it scared me. I got real nervous, and I told my wife was sitting on the couch, and I told her I've never been here before. And she was like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, she looked at me like I was out of my mind. I was out of my mind, right? I was in my environment.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I was like, I've never actually been here before. It felt like a totally foreign place. And I remember I have two memories from childhood that, looking back, I realized what happened was I was in my external environment. So this must mean I was in my head way early. Both of them involved walking out of a store into a parking lot at night when it was raining. And I remember I walked, and it was like magic. I walked out and I could see like everything looked sparkly, like the lights and like the concrete was reflective, and I could see like cars reflecting in the rain on the concrete, and everything was so vibrant. And those memories stuck with me my whole life. And I've realized that they were significant because those were like the two moments in my life whenever I was like fully externally oriented, which I'm sure sounds bizarre to you, Christina, right? Because that sounds completely different from your experience.
Yeah, I'm that annoying person on the hike that's just like, wow, 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 like I just chirp out on everything in front of me and around me. And the other thing is, and I've been with my parents for some time now, and they're the ones that pointed out that, they're like, you literally notice what is going on everywhere around us. Like I will spot things happening before anyone else sees it, and what that person is doing and what that person's talking about. Like and then I'm like, ooh, is this a trauma response, or is this just part of my? Because I'm so hyper aware a little bit, but like I'm just noticing patterns, and I'm really just noticing everything happening around me, and I'm super curious, genuinely curious about it too. Like I'm coming from I think at this point in my life, like a more regulated nervous system state. So I think that's just how I think it's just how I stay regulated. It's like essentially I'm co-regulating with my environment by just knowing what's going on in it.
That's exactly it. Yep. That's well said. That's perfect. And you said like, is it a trauma response? Probably. I mean, we definitely definitely an attachment pattern. That's the way to think about this. So the example I give sometimes is like, imagine like little bitty you, Jamie, little bitty you, Christina, little bitty me, and like so we're standing in front of a table, and there's 3 blocks on the table, and like these are the tools, the things that we can use to regulate ourselves when we don't feel safe. So imagine like you're in a situation with a caregiver and you don't feel safe. So maybe for me, I turned to my environment. I grabbed the building block and I took up a bunch of space. I was really present in my environment, and it didn't go well. And I can tell you, like from my upbringing, that was the case because like I was real tiny when I was growing up. I was premature and like just really little, and like all the men in my family were just these big, manly men, and to me that was like scary, right? And so I didn't feel safe to take up space. Right, so maybe I tried that and it didn't go well. I felt less safe, less connected to my caregivers, so I put that back. And maybe I tried sensation and I expressed my feelings, and and that didn't go well. And not to mention my body was really the problem for me growing up because I was so little. Right, so I didn't like that, so I put that back down. So I grabbed the mental building block and I went into fantasy. I went into my imagination. I began to live up here, and that felt way better. So I didn't put the block back down. I held on to it. And so next time I was in a similar situation, I didn't have to fool the table. I had the block. And so I used it again, and it kept working, so I kept using it. Before you know it, I'm not holding it anymore. It's like morphed into me. where I don't think about, I don't decide I'm going into my head right now. It just happens. Just like Christina, you don't think I'm going to go into my environment to regulate myself by regulating other people. Like, it just happens. And Jamie, it's the same for you with your body. So just, does that bring up anything, that example,
Wow.
especially in regard to attachment patterns?
For sure. I mean, mine, I couldn't be in my environment any more than I was forced to be in my environment, so I had to retreat somewhere. It was very unstable. And it's the classic emotionally dysregulated mom that's taking up all the space, and alcoholic father. It's like, oh, I ain't staying out there. I gotta go in here. Um,
That's right. But some folks, I want to hear your story, Christina, but some folks in that same situation may go external as like a hypervigilant, like, okay, what's going on?
and the times I would go
Yeah.
external was to check on their emotional state, their sensational state, because they could only take up space. So then I
Mm,
was then responsible. Here I was like kind of saying earlier of
yeah.
being responsible through my sensations for other people's sensations. And that's how the
Right.
pattern repeated.
Okay. That's great. I never thought about it that way. So it's almost like an externally oriented person's checking the temperature out here in the environment, whereas you were checking the temperature of the environment in your feelings.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Very
Exactly.
cool. Yeah, I've thought about this stuff a lot. I've never thought about that. That's great. That's so Christine, anything coming up for you?
This is so fascinating. For me, it's so disorganized parents. So checking and let's not even get into the dynamics. So just not stable. And it's interesting because you said take up space, which I feel the opposite. I would scan the space and actually retreat into myself, if that makes sense. Because I didn't want to take up space because I would test it. Sometimes I would need to take up space for a reason, to regulate emotions, to step in, parentified child. Um,
Yeah.
but often it was retreating within, but not sensationally. If that makes sense. It was like
Mhm.
constantly having to gauge how much exput versus input to take.
Yeah. Great. I love it's interesting because we've talked about earlier, like that you like to organize your space, and you use the term you had disorganized parents. It's almost like, is there a connection there? It's like you learned, okay, I need to organize the environment to find organization, I guess, within this disorder.
Yeah.
Uh, Pretty, it's kind of
Well,
mind blowing.
controlling where you can, right? Essentially,
Mhm.
Yeah,
finding stability where you can.
that's right. Just like I found stability in my mind.
Yeah.
That was the safe place for me.
Yeah.
Right.
So interesting.
Yeah, this is cool. I'm glad we did this. This is great.
I
Um,
mean, this, if,
yeah.
I don't know if we want to go this far with it, but like when I think about what you were talking about, both of you've worked with chronic, like you've worked with chronic pain, Tyler, and you're working with chronic illness, Christina, and thinking about sensationally oriented people in that way of like, if I think about it from a lens of like just chronic inflammation, if the body is so responsible for all information, at a certain point it can't tolerate that. So it keeps ringing the alarm bells. So that's kind of how I think about it when we see those co-occurring together. It's like all the information is just going through that one space and it can't hold it.
That's awesome, Jamie. Because I
Wow.
think I don't see. I don't know about you, Christine. I don't see as many mentally oriented people with chronic illness. It's more external and sensation. So it's like you got the theory that you just laid out, Jamie, and then you've got like the John Sarno kind of approach. Like, so the idea that chronic pain is the result of repressed or unconscious emotions. So if you're externally oriented, all emotional experiences are repressed because you're not connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we just opened up two avenues for working with chronic pain here. This
Yeah.
is fascinating. And for me, it's like the body was just, oh man, like no man's land, you know. I think in some ways I think I have like body dysmorphia because I still think that I'm really small, and I'm
Mm.
not. I grew like 8 inches after high school. It's just a late bloomer, but it's like my concept of my body because I live mentally. That's like I naturally experience my body through my mind. I think like I my body is different than what I think it is, right? And it's still a lot of work for me to be embodied. I I can do that. I know I can feel my whole body now. I've had really deep, enriching experiences of connecting with my body, but that took more work than anything, you know, because I got into like somatic therapy. I did a lot. I mean, for years, my spiritual practice was just feeling my body. Like there was a class that I went to every Wednesday from 12 to 2. I went for 2 years every week where we would focus on one body part and it'd be like the spleen or like the kneecap or some, you know, just some like random part of the body. It took so much work for me to learn how to feel. You know, and people, you know, at first they'd be like, "Well, what do you feel in your body?" I'm like, what do you mean?" You know, which I'm sure you makes you scratch your head, Jamie, because that's all you've ever known, right?
Well,
But
I
it,
was even curious
I
as
get
you
it.
did that, like, how do you get there? Like, when you were trying those activities or trying that out, were you like going there from here?
at
Like,
first,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And then you shifted it as like going there from where your spleen is. Like, even as you were naming the parts, I would feel like a little tingle to the place that you would name. But that's what made me curious to ask
yeah.
you how it went for you.
I rarely feel tingles. But yeah, it was just so much work, and that's what led to there's a practice in constructive awareness called talking with your hands, which is a kind of came from a insight, I guess, or an epiphany that I had. Because for me, it was just like it felt. I love a good spiritual thing, by the way, but a lot of the somatic practices come from more Eastern traditions, which I love. Not saying anything negative about that, but I'm naturally more like pragmatic and just like mentally oriented, right? So I would get frustrated because I hear all this teaching that was more like Eastern, and like I just felt like, okay, I don't need to. Should I have to have required to have a spiritual experience to feel my body, some mystical experience? And that's when it kind of hit me. It's like, what if internal sensations are just your sense of touch on the inside of your skin? That's what changed everything for me as a mentally oriented person. So it like, you know, the lesson is it's like this bottle here. You could hand me this blindfolded. I could tell you its weight, its shape, its temperature, its size, its boundary. I could go on for 20 minutes. But then if you ask me, like, what do you feel in your body? I'm like, what are you talking about? But I realized the same stuff that you can feel on the outside of your skin, you can feel on the inside of your skin. You can feel temperature and weight and shape and size, movement, all those things. So my practice became just noticing a sensation and practicing it, describing it, but only using words I would use if I was touching something with my hand. Which that was kind of the ticket for me. That's what helped me learn to really begin to connect with sensation. I began to develop a vocabulary to describe sensations, which then turned into a way to communicate my feelings on a deeper level, right? And so I know that the feedback that I've gotten from talking with your hands has been that it's been helpful for all orientations. So I guess I'm curious, Jamie and Christina, how has learning to connect and describe sensations that way been useful for you?
Yeah. For me, I will say um, maybe saying more about like how it allows to slow down the experience and be with it in a more expansive way. Um, like it's I use this word often, but it's not overwhelming. It can be like a pinch, a flick, a pull, a slicing, uh, like gradient sensation that's moving. Where before all of that was a migraine. Now, when
So
you
you,
start to shift and slow all that down, it's like, well, I can notice this. I can notice that gradient sensation for a little bit longer. And the longer I was curious about it, it's like, well, that's not really a migraine. That's just this sensation. Which I will say, since doing CA, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff changed, but I don't get headaches anymore. I was a chronic migraine sufferer.
Well,
So,
that's great.
Incredible.
Yeah.
yeah.
Sounds like you're
Seriously.
noticing more like the fine strokes of sensation, like the little
Hmm.
before it was just a big blob of sensation, and then you're starting to tease it out.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
What
even
about
as you
putting
said,
words?
fine strokes, I'm thinking about, like, if you imagine somebody creating a painting and, like, all the, like, oh, rest in peace, Bob Ross, but all the little details and how he would describe it. Like, you can look at sensation in that way, you can feel it in that way.
What about words, like the talking with your hands, like the vocabulary, right, for sensation? Did that help you? Because that seems like that's adding more of like a mental piece to it. And
Yeah.
just for you, Christina, too, like just actually being able to, describe with words sensations. Like, how did that help?
Yeah.
Oh, for
Christina,
me
you want
or
to?
for,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it made it, God, this is fun. It made it more tangible. Like
Me
it
too.
did though. It's like, it brings it out from within. So I think for someone externally oriented, talking with their hands, like that is actually the, my go-to. My go-to for feeling sensations within, because it's like, oh, I can I can feel this outside of myself, and it's actually the same. It's what you described earlier, basically. Like anything
Yeah.
outside and is also within, like can be felt within. So
Yep. And it's like,
definitely, yeah.
as an externally oriented person, you already had a vocabulary for external sense of touch. So like you already, that's the cool thing about the practice. You already have the vocabulary for it. You're just learning to apply it to sensation. And we haven't talked about it this way too much in like trainings and stuff, but it's like there is that mental piece to talking with your hands because you're using the words you're just using the mind to label, like to put words to the sensation instead of like it doing whatever it normally does. So for an externally oriented person, I
Right.
think that's a super helpful practice because you're kind of doing like both building blocks that are less developed,
It's my
right? Which is,
go-to. It's my go-to for anyone externally oriented, definitely. And yeah, it's just it's so helpful because it's really and this is, well, it's related and separate at the same time. With Jamie saying she's like a highly sensitive person, I would say the same thing for myself. I'm highly empathic, and so like if when I'm working with someone and they're experiencing something within their body, be it in their hands or in their body, I'm also feeling that within my often when I'm like describe the shape, I can already tap into what the shape looks like and with how they're going to describe it. It's like the
Hmm.
trippiest thing. And as it shifts, I also notice my body freeing it in a way, like as they free themselves, as it shifts, as it changes, because that's ultimately what constructive awareness does. It frees you. It makes you realize like this is something that's temporary. It's not permanent. It actually reminds you of impermanence, which is amazing for pain and someone who's like a chronic migraine sufferer. Like all these sensations are temporary, but in the moment they feel like they're with us forever. And it's really scary, with something like chronic pain and chronic illness. But yeah, it allows for freedom to like take your power back, take your body back, take your mind, your body, your spirit,
yeah,
energy, whatever, back.
whatever's less
Control.
developed, yeah, take it back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's
And
great.
that's been my favorite part. And it's interesting what Jamie said with the migraines, because I've seen, especially with my chronic pain sufferers, I know we discussed this in the other podcast episode, but for just to repeat it, it's like I've been able through constructed awareness to get folks off of their pain meds completely, completely. Like everything from ketamine to I mean, to nothing, to just being
Amazing.
in their body.
Love that. That's a good testimonial there. My goodness, that's great.
Yeah, it's my go-to.
Yeah. What about you, Jamie? Like noticing sensation because you're sensation oriented. Well, I'll say this real quick. my wife, sensation oriented. As I was learning all this stuff about somatic therapy, I would tell her, it's like you talk to her about, feeling your. Who was I to say that to her, right? But I'm like, feel your feelings, and like, she she went to see. She was seeing a chiropractor at the time who was of similar, perspective, and he would say that, feel your. She came home so mad one day from a session with him, and she's like, he keeps talking about feeling my feelings, and you keep telling me to feel my feelings. She's like, all I fucking do is feel feelings. And I was like, I said something like, is there a difference between like drowning in water and noticing that you're wet? And she was like, huh. Maybe I'm not feeling my feelings. It's like she's consumed by it. And that's a difference, right? So I don't know. I don't know if that resonates with you, Jamie, or if that ties into how you might respond. I just felt led to say that. So I don't know. Any thoughts on how it's been for you to learn to connect with sensations as a sensation-oriented person?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Of like, I got the same feedback from people. Just feel your feelings, and I'm like, get the out of here. Like, but that it makes sense because I wasn't feeling my feelings. It's like this beautiful partnership or like multiplicity of experience that happens between when you can see a thought and a sensation at the same time, but one's not forcing the other one, and it can just help make so much more like sense. It just becomes so much more expansive.
I love that real quick. It's like the building blocks are supporting each other.
Exactly.
Right? Yes.
And then you're like, oh, how do you sit with sadness? Oh, yeah, I can sit with sadness because sadness is telling me like, oh yeah, I can hear my dad's voice, the last thing he said to me. Oh, I can see his face. Oh, I can move to like, where does that feel in here? And I can move between them versus like, right? Like it just, that's a way different experience to be with.
That's great. And it's like no matter what the orientation is, I keep hearing the same sort of description that was similar to me, like the first time that it felt like this organization of experience. It's like, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's happening outside of me. Instead of just this clustered, overwhelming, like confusing experience where everything's just tangled together. It's like all the parts unravel through learning to connect with the building blocks and to shift, which is what we call tuning in CA, which is another topic for another day. But the ability to connect with all three, and also the ability to notice them together as they construct our experience. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And that's probably the perfect way to end today, because we're coming up on time. That's great, unless anybody has anything they want to add.
No, I was just thinking of the analogy with tuning, which is like the difference is like how, like we see all three of us here at the same time, mental, sensational, and environmental. But like the difference would be just, separately hearing us talk one at a time versus all together, into. And I feel like that would be an analogy for it.
Perfect. And there's times we kind of talked over each other, and those were like my least favorite part of the of the podcast, so, and that's because it's kind of confusing in that moment. Yeah, but when it's all laid out, there's clarity, and when that happens, I'm convinced that those are the moments that we can actually make change. And that goes back to our first principle. When you bring awareness to something, it changes. So as we improve our awareness of the parts that construct our experience, we have an opportunity to do something different. Like that first time I said that it all unfolded for me, I worked at a halfway house for recovering addicts, and it was all men, usually about 8 men in the house. And guys would come and go, but for a little while there was a guy there that I just disliked. I like most people. I did not like this dude, and he didn't like me. It was like oil and water. And like I walked out of my office that I had into the living room, and he said something hateful, and the pattern would be I would say something hateful back, and we'd have conflict. But when he said what he said, it was like everything laid out in front of me. You can't, if you're watching this, you can't see my hands, but they're kind of just like laying out in front of me. It's like he said what he said, and it's like I heard his words, right? I could hear the voice in my head. I could see the pictures in my mind of me strangling him or whatever, right? And like I could feel the sensations in my body. It's like my whole experience just laid out right in front of me. And that clarity allowed me to respond differently. It snapped me out of my autopilot response. And that's where I'm convinced at this point that real change happens therapeutically or just in life through increased awareness, right? And I responded to him in a way that was, I wish I had responded every time. And the crazy thing was, he responded completely differently when I responded differently, right? It's like it changed the whole experience. So that's our goal, right? I think that's a good way to summarize CA. It's like we're learning about ourselves, but all parts of ourselves. And in that, it allows us to make changes and create new patterns. I think the only reason a pattern repeats is a lack of awareness of the pattern. That's what we do in CA. We help to increase awareness of all aspects so you can make changes. I feel like a good place to stop.
Sounds good.
Perfect. So let's say somebody is watching this and they're like, man, I really resonate with Jamie. I really resonate with Christina. I'd like to look them up for therapy or just to shoot them a message. I don't know. How would anybody get in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me is probably through my email, I would say. It'd be my last name and then my first name. So morehartjamie@gmail.com.
Perfect.
And on social media at Begin Within Today or website beginwithintoday.com. Christina Kantzavelos.
Mm-hmm. Great. Anybody wants to look me up? My personal website is tylerorr.com. Super easy. But if you want to learn more about constructed awareness, you can go to constructedawareness.com. There's all kinds of fun stuff. We've got 3 levels of training now. I don't know if y'all know this, but the Constructed Awareness Institute was just approved to be an NBCC, continuing education provider. So that's a big deal. On top of the ASWB and APA. So, there's trainings pretty soon. We'll be coming out with lots of new, like smaller training, like smaller module kind of self-paced training. That's the main thing on the agenda right now. So maybe if you're listening to this, that stuff's already been created, right? Because time is a funny thing. But check out constructedawareness.com if you'd like to learn more about this. And we got some previous episodes of this podcast, and we're going to make a whole bunch more. So stay tuned. But thank you all so much for joining me today. This has been awesome. I think maybe one day we could even do a part 2 of this because I feel like there's more to say. Yeah.
For sure. Thanks for having us on, Tyler.
Yeah,
Such
well,
a
thank
pleasure.
you. And thank you for listening out there, and we'll see you next time.